So let's talk about how much water someone should ingest in a day, and it's going to be different for each person. The more muscle you have, the more water you actually need, because the more fat mass you have, the less water you need from a weight basis. So if you're kind of going off of weight, in someone who is more contains more body fat is going to need less water, because fat essentially contains zero water, whereas skeletal muscle is 75% water. So very muscular weightlifters, etc., need more water, even if they weigh the same as someone who doesn't have as much muscle. And even more so, someone who has a lot more body fat. So let's keep that in mind. But typically, the amount of water someone loses per day, not taking into account sweat losses from like exercise, is 4% of your body weight. So if you multiply your body weight in pounds by 0.04, that will give you how many pounds of water that you will lose per day that you will need just to kind of maintain positive balance and not go into negative balance of water. And once you have that number of pounds, you divide that by 2.2, and that will give you about how many liters of total water you need. So for me, I weigh about 75 kilograms. I need about 3 liters of water total. I'll get probably just under a liter of that through food. So if you eat mostly whole foods, 50 to 90% of whole foods are made up of water. So if you're eating mostly a whole food diet, you can potentially get 1/3 of that 3 liters from foods like fruits, vegetables, and animal foods. And then the other 2 liters can come from liquids, whether it's tea, or if you're not over consuming coffee, not giving yourself a big diuretic or salt loss, some of that can come from coffee, and then also obviously just plain water. But then on average, if you want to basically figure out how much water you need through sweat losses during exercise, typically you would want to weigh yourself before and after, and then the difference in body weight would be the amount of water that has been lost. And then typically you need to consume somewhere between 125 to 150% of that loss back, because you're not going to absorb and retain all of that. And then most people, when it comes to salt intake, most of the evidence shows that somewhere between around 3,000 milligrams to 5,000 milligrams of sodium per day is optimal for most people, which is somewhere between about 1 1/3 teaspoons of salt to about 2 teaspoons of salt per day.